Thanks for joining us today, guys. Today we are joined by Blake Templeton out in Texas, and super excited for him to give his perspective on his career and how he's gotten to where he is today. So, Blake, you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Absolutely. First of all, appreciate the invite. Look forward to doing this. Love giving value and helping people change the trajectory of their atmosphere, change the way you think, scale, collapse time on what you're doing, and figure out how to do it faster. So, yeah, Blake Templeton and own Boron Capital. We have two main hedge funds. One is in self-storage and mobile home parks, and one is in cryptocurrency. And started with a college dropout, not a penny to my name, back in '06, and didn't know you couldn't defer student loans after you drop out. So I had to humbly move back in with mommy and daddy, and ended up going to a real estate conference and just got hooked. I mean, I didn't know anything about real estate in '06, but man, I knew I was wired for numbers, optics and metrics, and ended up getting a line of credit. Back then they'd give anybody money. And so pulled out a lot of money at that time. It was 20 grand, gave it to a mentor, asked Wells Fargo, how quickly does that first monthly payment have to be made? And then, burn the bridge behind me. Started in single family foreclosures and knocking doors on foreclosures, doing short sales, discounting the mortgage with the mortgage companies, and then buying those properties and flipping those properties. Got really good at doing that. Did 300 plus transactions in the first 6 years, and then wanted to go into commercial real estate. So went into commercial real estate. Again, every single thing has been paying for speed. So lots of mentors. So spent over $1 million in mentors, letting them pull out the red carpet of how they did what they did to collapse time, to educate myself at a higher level, paying for speed, and went into multiple other niches in real estate, and realized that we did this massive study from 1991 to 2021, and it showed every single niche of real estate, from commercial to hotels to single family, to putting the stock market in there, putting every single thing that you could possibly go into, and realize that self-storage complexes and mobile home parks, where you just own the land, those two appreciate absolutely by far the most than anything else. And so we built a hedge fund around that, and it's a beautiful thing, beautiful thing. Strong returns, does really, really well in a recession, because in self-storage, people are actually downsizing. So they put their stuff in storage. In the abundant times, everyone's buying, so they have to go put stuff in storage. And then with mobile home parks, they're at the lowest side of the housing market. And so in a recession, everyone downsizes into housing that's affordable. And then in a abundant time, there's always people in that degree of lifestyle, but they grew up in mobile homes, and that's just where they want to stay. So it's during COVID, even we were at 93% occupancy in the hedge fund. And then cryptocurrency is such a brilliant thing. We can dive into it as much as you want to, but we basically called a timeout. And as a company, 16 years in, we just called a timeout and said, man, where's the world going? Realizing everything was going digital. And what did we need to do to play in a larger pathway? Realizing the stock market was going into a dead decade. The bond market was already began a dead decade, and everything was shifting. And we spent thousands of hours in due diligence and education on the why that direction. And that's been and anything we've done in the last 16 years, that's been the home run for our investors. It's an actively managed index. So it's not like just going and investing in in cryptocurrency. It's active managed index. So we make money on the downside, we make money on the upside. We're always able to have versatility inside the actual hedge fund. And the returns over the last 2 years have been in the triple digit returns net to our investors. So that's a overall big picture on me.
Excellent. So many routes to take. I love it. So let's start kind of in the beginning. So you mentioned numbers and kind of just, did you fall into real estate with that conference, and kind of what drove the I'm done with school and I'm going to go figure it out on my own?
Yeah, it's a great question. My grandparents had a successful business, and they took me to all these motivational conferences. And at every conference, they were always around people with lots of money. And I grew up middle class, but it was this mindset like, man, I actually could do something on my own. So this was really inbred into me through my grandparents. And so when I went to the real estate conference, obviously prior to that, I dropped out of college because I was going to go own my own business somehow, some way. It was shoot, fire, aim. I had no idea what, but I'm like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm wired for it. I can feel it. I never worked for anybody in my life, not even growing up. I had this feeling like I'll just go mow lawns. I'll go do something. I went and got a massage, went to massage school. I'm going to go do massages. Like somehow, some way I'm going to go, be on my own. And so when I went to the conference, it was this visualization that I work really well with formulas. I didn't even really understand that, but I work really well with formulas. So I can not like complex math. I'm talking about like A plus B equals C. Like, how do you scale? How do you do more of these things? I see, how to wholesale a house, or I see how to acquire the house. How do you scale that? How do you acquire more of them? So that then produced getting really granular on the marketing, getting really creative, and quickly became the force to reckon with, if you will, in the foreclosure market in my hometown. And we handled 60% of all the foreclosures, and then realized that I didn't have the skill to scale it beyond my current area. But then I drew my mind to it's the quality question. How do I scale into commercial? How do I get into commercial? It was really a daunting thing, it felt inferior, to go that direction. But then again, I paid for speed, got mentors, and the mental framework is like, you have to grow, you have to think bigger. And commercial real estate is just more zeros and in the same process, just a bigger piece of the thing. And so
So why commercial? How did you get from you're dominating foreclosures, right, in a space? Why not spend more time figuring out how to scale that and take that into another county or another city and replicate success versus starting over and going into commercial?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So in 2009, we had 40 foreclosure packages that we were working on. We were closing about 5 a month, and they averaged, 12, somewhere in there, $12,000 profit per deal. Just me and my wife working out of our office off of our house. And at this time, we had about a 93% success rate on the packages. And all of a sudden, all the banks nationwide said, this is in 2009, after the 2008 crisis. And they said, we're going to take 90 days and send all the properties to foreclosure that are currently in loss mitigation or, in pre-foreclosure, and see if we can, clean the system and start fresh. But you didn't know it was 90 days. You just knew they were sending all of them to foreclosure. So they closed all the files. So I had, $500,000 in net profit sitting that I was very confident we would close. And we had this fantastic relationship with all the homeowners because we were helping keep a foreclosure off the record, and then actually helping put them in an apartment, and then helping them move. I bought a moving truck. I mean, we were doing the whole 9 yards. It was ridiculous. It was crazy, but it was just because we're trying to really really actually put them in a better stance. So all those properties just boom, 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 boom went to foreclosure. So that was a massive shift in the market. Of course, all the investors we were selling to got kind of, iffy because they're listening to the national news, and so it was just this time period in my life where I realized, man, it makes complete sense to scale. I know how to do the thing. I'm very aware, very capable of doing the thing. But that wasn't happening in the commercial world. So yeah, that's the main reason. It was definitely a new burning of the bridges, if you will.
So let's use that as a kind of jumping off point, right? So you've got this successful business, you're making money, right? 60K a month, 720 a year, if I'm doing the math correctly, on top line revenue. A big change from, taking the 20K from Wells Fargo, right? Feeling in a good spot. How did you choose to, where to put that investment as you were growing the company, right? And then obviously you've got this market shift, right? And then what did that do in terms of your framework of, where you wanted to invest and how you looked, to protect you, your wife, and, company in the future?
Yeah. So out of the gate, as soon as we'd closed 4 deals, I think we had made 30 grand immediately. So this was, I had done that off of that first $20,000 coaching and then like another $2,000 boot camp. So essentially made the investment back, but now we took those monies. I left that money on the credit card.
So let's clarify for a second. You took the 20 grand you took from Wells Fargo went directly to the coach before
Correct.
you had any business whatsoever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I truly burned the bridge, and actually knew this is what I want to do. And, the realization was I just grew up with the mindset, you got to pay for speed. So I knew that college wasn't going to get me what I wanted. So I left that world. So then the next thing that made the most sense was pay for someone who's going to actually hold your hand through the process, give you the actual nuts and bolts to actually make you successful. And that was only a 6-month course. I mean, that was on a 6-month mentorship for 20 grand. And back then that was a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money now, but that's a lot of money then, 15 years ago. So I end up, after the first 4 deals, we end up finding a new coach who can actually take us into short sales, into helping us learn this modality. And that was another 25 grand. And we just kept paying for speed. So as soon as we made that money back, we got into more coaching. And so the first few years, I mean, I probably spent all the money minus our living expenses in more coaching, because I started realizing that I was going from, closing a deal. The first deal took 4 months to close. And then in that next 5 months, we made, 96 grand. And then in the next year, we made 181 grand. And so, I mean, you just started picking this pace up. So we'd put, hundreds of thousands into coaching in the first few years. And then it was this time period of realizing how to actually grow in width. So then those profits started going in width, growing new people, and realizing I was horrible at hiring. I had never hired anyone. The first girl I hired 6 months later is in her, which is at our home office. So I have an airplane hangar, and we ended up framing in 500 square feet and of the airplane hangar. And back then, this is over a decade ago, we were still working. We don't work there anymore, but my wife would just come down in her lounge clothes, to work on the loss mitigation files, home business, if you will. And so this girl starts mirroring my wife's clothing, and she ends up in her house shoes, her bedtime pants, and a wife beater, little tank top. And I'm like, oh dear God, this is not gonna work. This is absolutely ludicrous. And so I realized then that it's a top-down company, and I did not have the skills to actually hire people. I didn't. So then I got coaching on, how do you run a business? How do you actually? And so my whole entire mindset was, the money wasn't mine. I was just managing God's money, and the Lord had given me a business. And so I wanted to steward it how he wanted me to steward it. So I should get skilled on how to steward it. So I was just putting the money back into coaching. And that was the best thing I could have possibly done at that season, because, man, one bad hire is like a 6-month, back pedal. And so then we started getting into personality, our coaches had people do 4 different personality tests. And then I would go through those personality tests and start really realizing that that I might have somebody in the wrong seat on the bus, or I might actually, this person would be really good for me right now, but they're not going to be good for me in a year. So I got to decide, are they worth training? Because they don't have the capacity in their wiring for where we're going. So maybe they're a good follow through and fact finder, but they're a slow, quick start. They don't have the ability to go fast. So right now we're going into a new venture, let's say, and I need them to be on the side of fact finding and research and follow through. But they are going to be in a different seat on the bus later once all the systems are created, because they need to stay in that type of a role, and that role won't exist anymore or whatever. So, so many different nuances. But as we went into commercial real estate, we realized that one, we can make a lot more money way faster. And it came back to that point of like scale. You had to scale. And there's a quote that says, adversity reveals genius, prosperity conceals it. Meaning you have to always have something bigger to run after, to become, or to do something greater, like you're living for a purpose bigger than yourself. And so I realized that I always wanted adversity. I always wanted, not like derogatory adversity, obviously, but this ability to fight through something, to become something, to scale something. And so we went into, new ventures looking to scale. It just kept being that question of, how might I take this to a whole nother level? What ways can we collapse, to make things more economy of scale, or stronger efficiencies? Or what third-party coaching should I bring in to actually elevate my team in their own skill sets? So typically, for those who are listening, you had to play all the roles at one time. Like, you've worn all the hats. So you, in theory, know how to train all the people. But what I realized was I need them to be trained better than I'm trained in their skill sets. And the goal would be that everyone is so much better than you that they supersede you in those departments. And that takes bringing outside training in. And so some of those outside training can be us going to conferences. Like, I took my executive team to a conference this last week, and I told them they could either give me their phone, or they could turn their phone off and leave it in the room. And so this is like, most of my achievers are like, have this shaking syndrome, because they're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? But we prepared them a whole week ahead of time. Like, it's as if you're gone, and you're in the hospital, and you don't have anything, you can't respond to anything. So you're gonna have to hand this off to your second in command. So who's going to take over what what emails and projects that you are working on, who's going to take those over? And so it was a beautiful thing to get them to like fully get out of that, and to be able to think about the quality questions. Quality questions bring quality answers, and to get them into this growth mentality of how do we grow? How do we scale? How do we, where are my blind spots? What's the upside of this opportunity? What's the downside of this opportunity? And, can I live with the downside? What are the issues that are coming my direction, and how do I prepare for them now so that I can put things in place? And so, paying for coaching has been one of the largest things of, elevation to my team. And that's where a good chunk of the money is gone in the earlier years. And obviously we have a massive budget now for continued education for sure.
How did you determine who the right coach was and what the right price was, right? Like coming out of college, you're going to take a loan and you're going to spend 20 grand, which to your point was a ton of money at that time, right? Like, how'd you know this person would actually get you where you wanted to go? And how'd you find them? How'd you select them? Kind of what did that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. And just to be just to be transparent, the first guy didn't. And so I went to a conference. I was living with my parents. My parents got a letter in the mail, and my mom's like, "Hey, you might want to go to this." I'm like, "Interesting. I'm the entrepreneur. I'm interested." And I went, and I used all of my savings. I had 2 grand from mowing lawns back in high school, and I bought this small course that they had. And then their sister company called me for this $20,000 course. Like, "Hey, you might actually want a mentor." And so it felt right. I needed somebody. I didn't even know there was coaches, like I didn't even know there was something else out there. So I went with what I had. I had my gut of, like I want to do this thing. But I didn't do any deals with that guy. But that led me into researching this thing called short sales. And I found this one lady doing it, I think it was $1,000 boot camp. And that was the gold. So it's this realization that, like you can think through some stuff as if, money is yours and you could lose it. But a prosperous mind, or a mind who hungers for prosperity, realizes that you're actually searching for the wisdom. I never had one mentor who could meet all my needs in business. They're all like a certain kind of chisel, or a certain kind of drill bit, or a certain kind of tool. And so I had to know, the quality question was 20. I mean, the average one's 20 nowadays is 25. 25 to 35, is, and that could be four 3-day events, or that could be, I like to be immersion. I want to touch them, feel them, and I want to do something with them. So some of them are 50,000, it's like direct exposure and one-on-one time. And, but it all comes down to, like, I had to get really clear on where I was going. So that's, it just depends on, I had to realize I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's a really dangerous place to be, because when you don't know what you need, you don't know what your blind spots are. You don't know, can you scale it? You don't even know how to scale it. So I had to start brain dumping all the questions on, what do I not know that I don't know? Where do I want to go? At least I think this is where I want to go. And then I got to reverse engineer, where am I at? And then where's the gap between the two? And then I had to start creating what would be, looked at as dumb questions, like, how does someone do this? And we don't want to ask those questions as an entrepreneur, because we're like, I should probably already know this. This is just where my deficit is. But then mentors start asking questions back at you. They answer a question with a question, and then they start finding your gaps. I have one mentor that his name is Keith Cunningham, and he does business mastery for Tony Robbins. And I'm in Tony Robbins' mastermind strongly in 2014 and 15, and still in it today. But that's a $300,000, mentorship. And it's just full immersion. And that was 117 days in a single year, from 3 or 4 different countries to 200 of us, just in full immersion. And, but my point is, Keith Cunningham, his mastermind was simply, is 33 grand at the time. And you're a board of directors with 16 people, and he's on your board, and these other 15 people are on your board, and you're on their board. And that was gold, because that gave you could actually look at everyone else's numbers. You're able to find their blind spots. And then you start asking quality questions. Like, that's wrong. There's something. So it's like someone can interpret Spanish, but they can't speak it. Like, that's a piece of the education. Now you got to learn how to speak it. So I could see their blind spots. I just didn't know how to fix them. And then you start learning how to fix them, which obviously helps you point out your blind spots and helps you learn how to fix yours. So, yeah, so that was the big piece, is just like the education, the maturity. I didn't go to college. So I think, getting a master's have actually helped me? I don't know, but I definitely felt like I had deficiencies. But part of my deficiencies, and this is probably, a lot of you guys listening probably can relate, where you were the shoot, fire, aim, or you were the fire trailblazer, or you were the one who did the thing outside of the box, and there wasn't a model. I felt like in our entire business, like there wasn't a model for what I do. So a mentor was like helping me with, he had to get creative to help me, if that makes sense. Because like, well, I don't really know anyone who does exactly like you. So like, for instance, in our hedge fund, in our cryptocurrency hedge fund, like we're so far ahead of the curve. Institutions don't do cryptocurrency. So Bob can't go to institution and say, hey, I want to invest $1 million in cryptocurrency. Like, I don't have a button. I'm not regulated. I don't have a button on my computer. I can put you in a mutual fund, but not cryptocurrency hedge fund. And so we're in this beautiful little box, but there's no one for us to model. I mean, you are the great one. There's no one greater coming at the time. So it's a beautiful, for us, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing but in real estate, growing last, 15 years, we would be in different pockets, and we had to do what we call butterfly marketing. So some of you can relate with this, where you go into a different industry and you find something that's like, man, that is a powerful tool, or that's a beautiful skill set, or that's a revelation. And then you try to butterfly that, like transform it and fix it. And how does that fit in my industry? Is there a way that I can twist that to like make it work in my industry? And so I feel like we've done that. Time is precious when you can do something like that and pull from another category.
As you fast forward to today and you look back, right? It sounds like the involvement of coaches is still very prevalent, both for yourself as well as your team. I'm guessing the amount that you invest in that has increased exponentially as your revenue has increased as well. At what point did you say, was there a saturation limit in terms of the amount of coaches or types of trainings, where it was like, hey, I'm good here now, but I still have extra cash coming in, and then what did you go do with that cash, right? So it sounds like the first couple of years were run, reinvest in coaches, run faster, right? Make more, reinvest back in coaches, right? Make more, right? At a certain point, I'm guessing you've outpaced that, right? And how did that change kind of how you approached it, or where you put money, or,
Yeah.
how you think about things?
Yeah. So it's changed drastically. I mean, we still use coaches today, but it's very like sniper. But we spent way more money in the past than we do now, and we create our own coaching for our team. So at this level, my role is to create the coaching for our team. So we have training every morning that every single employee goes through. It's motivational, and more than not, the training is how to control the voices in their head. And the training is, how do you, under deadlines and obstacles, how do you, pull yourself above that and actually have wisdom and discretion and understanding, and still walk in peace and joy in the middle of adversity. And so, but as far as where our money goes today, we're in a exponential growth period, throwing our money back into our investments. So for instance, the 2 hedge funds, that's where we're putting our money. We're putting our profits back into our hedge funds. Once you have something that you can scale, and the scale is exponential, it allows you to have, again, if we're providing triple digit returns to our investors, the thought line is, well, I would want triple returns for my own money too. So, it's the complete shift now. Now my role as CEO is processing, how might I scale each person in their role? How do I help them think different? How do I help them focus on their A-level tasks versus their D-level tasks? How do I help them pull things off of them where they can actually go deeper in the wisdom that they actually do have versus just working on, keeping the fiery darts or the, issues from happening? And then how do we scale traffic? How do we limit expenses? How do we close our customers better? How do we provide a world-class customer service at a higher level? How do we have a bigger megaphone in getting our voice out? And then as our profits come in, putting those profits back into the investments that we're selling. That is our highest and strongest focus right now.
So as you're in this training role and you're thinking of, your team, clients coming, right, like, et cetera, for the listeners, what would you say is one piece of advice, or, where should they start as they're trying to figure out, how to grow and develop and amplify their own companies?
Yeah, so it depends where everyone is, but we run a top-down company, which simply means if there's a problem four layers down in staff and employees and contract labor and even vendors, it starts at the top up. So it starts with the person who's in responsibility over those people, because something in me has come out of the overflow of my heart. My mouth speaks. Something's come out of me that got disjointed down below. And so, the easiest thing to start with is, if you've got people under you, is master vision casting to them of where we're going, and then pile more on them, and then find out where their overwhelm is, because you have to fill their capacity. The majority of humans went to college and they worked really well under pressure because they waited until they had one day left to study for the test. So apparently they're really good at pressure. And so what we do is we affirm, vision cast where we're going. So we have investments that we tell our GM, like, that's yours. You own it. That's your property. It's not my property. That's yours. It's your now I own it, but that's, the whole mentality is that is actually yours. It's your affections. You control the thing. Whatever you want to see on it can come to fruition. Like whatever vision you see for, this 5-star powerhouse of a property, you can create it. And then we put as much as we can on them to leverage them to expand their capacity. And then I have one-on-ones with them, and I find out a pulse of where the voices start coming in of overwhelm or anxiety, or I'm not good enough. And then, but you have to get to that point of a stress test to find out. You got to know your people well enough to know like where that is. And then we remove those voices, because the voices are alternative reality. They're not real. So we remove those voices, and now we say, now you can still have peace in the middle of chaos. You can still have joy in the middle of uncertainty. You can still have victory in the middle of the impossibilities. And we have empowering statements, and we help them visualize this. We birth the thing in them. And then they're like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier than I thought it was. They're like, yeah, it's the same amount of work, And then we affirm, vision cast. This can be greater. It can be more. It can be better. And then we put more tasks on them, and then we wait for that overwhelm to happen. And then we help them, then we help them learn how to delegate. We help them, pull things off of them that, are what we call a D-level task. Oh, you should just be doing the A-level tasks. Why are you doing this? Oh, I should have a bad rule on that. So it's just training. And if you've got one person, if you're the one, then there's no one greater coming. You're the great one. Like, you've got to be doing this to yourself. If you've got 50 people under you in 10 levels of 5 people each or something, then I mean, this is one of the greatest things that I've learned, is that every single company has an ability to add a zero, and the largest problem is the voices in their people's head. It's not growing new traffic sources. It's not growing better sales platforms. It's not learning an education of something. It's the voices in their head that's creating these bad roles of self-destruction. And so you just got to know your people. And if you don't know your people, then you start adding new things to try to get the thing going, while you have people who are, what we call the natural condition of man, where they have fallen asleep and become a machine. And they're there, but they're not there. So I can guarantee that you can walk into any of our properties and you'll find people full of purpose, joy, vivaciousness. There's no water cooler talk. They're a family. They help each other. It's just iron sharpening iron. They love adversity. That they would be able to quote to you, "I love adversity because it produces wealth and game excellence." And I mean, there's 100 other empowering statements they could all quote to you, and they live these out. It's like their repertoire of greatness. And that allows us to then prosper at a higher level, not just because we can put the money back into the business and grow it exponentially, but we can actually not putting the money back into grow people, putting the money back into actually in the hedge funds to actually produce massive results financially, because the people are managing their voices in their head.
Fascinating. Just the psychology, right? And the perspective and how big an impact that has on people's well-being, one, right? But also the work output, right? And what that means for themselves as well as for the company. Great insight there. If people want to learn more about how you're doing that and how to bring that to life in their companies, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, what I'd love to do is, again, when you and I were talking before the podcast, I lit up and I said, man, the money is in cryptocurrency. That's where the money is. When we went into cryptocurrency, we realized, I mean, we have about 18 months before the institutions get into it. And if you get it, if you understand the central government is destroying your wealth, and you get it that inflation's 15+%, and you get it that the news is not where your wisdom's going to come from, then you realize you got to be into something decentralized. It's something outside of the system. When we went there, we realized, man, this is like the golden egg when you have something that can actively manage something like this. So what I'd love to do, the best way to get a hold of me is through this process. And I'd love to give you guys a free masterclass on the secrets to get started in crypto and how to build what we call your all-weather portfolio, and then have a massive success. So the best way to get a hold of me to get that is to pull out your cell phone and text the word invest to the phone number 877-771-0615. Again, text the word invest to 877-771-0615. And then it'll send a prompt and it'll connect you to us. And then I'll send that free masterclass to you. As a business owner, now, if there was any time that one could call the greatest wealth transfer in world history, it's happening right now before our eyes, and it's in cryptocurrency. So whatever business you're in, whether you have a solopreneur, one person, operation, or you have a company that's fixing to go public with 500 employees, or you're already a publicly traded company and you're looking to have a massive disposition, no matter what it is, the money in cryptocurrency, that is where the transition is. That's where the greatest wealth transfer in world history is. So again, pull out your cell phone. And then also, if you're interested in getting a hold of me, learning more about what we do, if you have any, as far as education in any way, shape, or form, and self-storage and mobile home parks or in cryptocurrency, again, text the word invest to 877-771-0615.
Awesome, Blake. I appreciate it. Appreciate you sharing your insights and also giving, tremendous value with your class to the audience. That's incredible and much appreciated.
Hey, my joy. I look forward to just pouring in. And if there was ever a time in the world where it's time to work together to scale, it's now.